All right, you little coders, are you ready to do this? I know you're here for a reason. If you're new to the channel, my name is Rob. I'm a coding instructor for PreCodeCamp, and we're going to be going through FreeCodeCamp's building a confidential email page. And we're going to go through it from user story from top to bottom. And if that sounds like something that interests you, keep on watching because we're going to go through it from an instructor's point of view, but we're going to add a few tips and tricks along the way. So follow us in the journey. We're going to go ahead and get everything all done. And the only thing that we ask you to do here is like the video because that really helps out that YouTube algorithm. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here's the example of what we're going to be building out. I hope that's what it looks like. If not, we're going to go fill in the gaps along the way. We see some blurring action with the text. You can see that it's totally still selectable. We just can't see it with the way that the CSS is doing it. It looks like we have some twisted text here originally that might have looked like an image, but really it is just a text block here. And same thing with the top secret with some borders and things of that nature. Let's go ahead, dive right into it. Again, if you are stuck on a certain user story, take a look down in the description below. It's all chaptered out for you, and that way it makes it real quick and easy. Towards the end, we will go ahead and test everything out. I don't like testing as I go. I will test everything at the end and then fix what needs to be fixed. And I will even put a little chapter at the end of what all needed fixed. And sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's nothing. So let's go ahead, dive right in to user story number one. User story number one, it tells us that we should have a main element with the ID of email. Everything that we are talking about here as far as something visually being seen, we're going to go ahead and put that inside of the body tag. And so I'm going to go ahead and do a main. I'm going to close it off here. And in the very first tag is where I'm going to place the ID, and I'm going to set that to email. And I believe that would satisfy user story number one. User story number two, it has us start applying some CSS. Before we start applying CSS, we need to link our style sheet. And I am surprised on this one, it didn't even give us a note on doing it. So maybe it just expects us to know. So let's go ahead and link it right here. So we need a link tag. We're going to make that a style sheet. And then we want the href to be styles.css. And why do we want it to be styles CSS? Because we want it to match this right here. And if you've been watching any of our videos, I'm always telling you that I'm always telling students, hey, when we're trying to do any kind of CSS work, let's go ahead and add something to it that will be drastically visible if we were to change anything. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Styles CSS here. And the easiest way to see if we have it linked up properly is just go ahead and add a background color. Let's go ahead and add blue. There we go. So we know that it is linked. So any mistyping down here will cause this to not be blue. So a great way to test that out is just change the background color. And if we don't need it, let's go ahead and remove it. But we at least know that our styles are linked. Now we can go ahead and proceed with our user story number two. So it says that your email element should have a padding of 50 pixels and a top margin of 50 pixels, a width of 500 pixels, and a border that has 2 pixels. So let's go ahead and complete all of these items here. So this is one of the first times, I believe, in FreeCodeCamp that we are actually targeting the IDs that we're placing on these elements, because I haven't seen it before. It's always been classes. But remember, the way to target IDs versus classes, I always think of classes have periods, IDs have hashtags, or think of your driver's license number as an ID. That is what we're going to start off with. And then we can go ahead and type in the ID that we are trying to target. In this case here, it's going to be email. Now, the very first thing in here, it says that the padding needs to be 50 pixels. So we're just going to go ahead and do padding and set that to 50 pixels. Next, it says the margin of the top, so margin top, set that to 50 pixels. It says the width needs to be 500 pixels. And then the border should be of 2 pixels, and we'll do solid and black. All right, so we are now getting at least something on the page, and that allows us to have user story number two complete. User story number three, it says that the total width of the email element, including padding, borders, and everything else, needs to be 500 pixels. And this one might have thrown you for a loop. And I'm going to show you a little bit of maybe we can figure out what they are looking for this user story. Remember, anytime they give you a user story, there's going to be a test associated with it. And so we can come down here really quick, and I don't know if this is more like cheating or not, but you do have the ability to come down here and just look at all the stuff that we've done before. Okay, we've done the padding, we did the margin top, we did the width, we did the border. What's next? They gave us this clue box size, right? A border box. And we can take a look at W3 Schools in case you are wanting to gain a little bit more knowledge on what it does. But it says up here that the purpose of it is it allows you to include the padding and the borders onto an element to get that total width and height, because if you don't, it could exceed outside of the range here. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to take all of the paddings and the borders and take that into account when we say, hey, this thing needs to be 500 pixels wide. That's what we need. We don't need any more. So that's where we're coming at when it comes to the CSS. So let's come back over here. We've identified that property here of box sizing, and then we want to set that to border box. All right, so you can see that it did in fact shrink this on me, and I believe this would satisfy user story number 3. Okay, so I was doing a real quick scan to see if there's anything else mentioned as far as background colors or anything else as far as, hey, do we need to center this or not? And I didn't see any, so that's why I'm going to interject at this point here. Let's add a few more cleanup things to the email that will make this look exactly like the example that we were shown. So as far as the background color, let's go ahead and set that to seashell. All right. Next, in order to center this, you can see how it's really flushed over here to the left-hand side. Let's go ahead and set our margins on this to the margin left auto. And then we're also going to do margin right auto. And that should center it. Okay. Now, here's the cool thing. If we take all these margins that we just got done doing, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up here to the top to demonstrate this here. We can go ahead and bind all of these to a single property. Let me explain. Let's do a margin. We know that the margin top needs to be 50 pixels, right? Let's go ahead and do 50 pixels. We'll do that on the top and bottom, even though it didn't tell us to do the bottom. But then as far as the left and right, we can just do auto. This will give us the same exact effect as these 3 lines of code, and we just cleaned up 3 for 1. All right. So anyways, I believe this right here will allow us to grow and move on with the next user story here, which is user story number 4. So I just want to do a real quick cleanup to make it look more or less like the demo or the example that they gave us. User story number 4, it says that we need to have a div element with one ID being confidential, the other one being top secret. And this all needs to be within the emails. So it doesn't tell us to put confidential or top secret in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. So inside the main that you see right here, I'm going to go ahead and do a div and close it off. And then I'm going to do another div and close it off as well. All right, once I have those, now I can go ahead and do the ID confidential. And in between the div here, I can type the word confidential. Then in the second div, I'm going to go ahead and add some spacing here. This needs to have the ID of top secret. And then in between the divs, top secret. All right, so that's what we should have here for user story number 4. And I believe we're going to be styling these here in the next user story. So let's go ahead and move on to it. Okay, we're on user story number 5, and it says here that the confidential top secret elements, they should have a display of inline block. And let's go ahead and add that to our CSS. So the way that we're going to be targeting it is because we're utilizing IDs here. You can see ID here. I want to go ahead and create 2 different selectors. And I could combine these into one, but I feel like I want to have these just be a little different, because when we look at the example up here, it doesn't look like these 2 are the same, in that they're rotated a little different. And so in that aspect, they are not the same. And maybe we would be able to refactor our CSS later on once we have decided, hey, this is what a stamp looks like. And then we can tweak it individually based upon the confidential or based on the top secret. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and create 2 of these different selectors here. And again, IDs, they get the hashtag, and we're going to do top secret. And then I'm going to go ahead and open up the curly brackets. I'm going to go ahead and just focus on one of these at a time here. And it says that we need to have an inline block for the display. So I'm going to do display inline block. And what's interesting, if you are looking into, hey, what's the difference between block and inline block? You can come up here and see that the inline block basically gives you like the best of both worlds, because if you're just inline, you're not going to be able to set the width or the height of the element. And the block scope, we're taking up 100% of the width there. And we may not want that. And so I guess that's why it's leading us to the best of both worlds, where, hey, it doesn't go to its new line because of the inline block, right? So let's go over to our code. And it does mention over here for line number 5 that or user story number 5, it wants us to do not only top secret, but it wants us to do confidential as well. So let's go ahead and apply that. Both of those are now inline block. You can see that no longer are they taking up that full space. They're now collapsed on top of each other just by utilizing it. But we are able to now apply things such as margins and paddings, and it will affect its width and stuff. So anyways, should satisfy us for user story number 5. So user story number 6, it says that the confidential and top secret elements, they should have padding, a left margin, and a border. And let's go ahead and start off with the border being the first thing that we're going to add. And that's just because we can probably see some things a little easier with the border, and then we get the margins and padding put on afterwards. So we're going to do a border here. We're going to do 5 pixels, and then we're going to do solid and then red. And now we get this nice little border around it, but it doesn't look very eye-pleasing. It doesn't look like a stamp. It doesn't look like anything like that quite yet. And that's where the margin and padding are going to come into play. As far as the padding, let's go ahead and do a padding of 10 pixels all around. And now it's starting to look a little bit like a stamp. And then the margin, that's just going to push things away. So we'll do a margin left of 200 pixels. And we'll make sure I put that in the right spot here and put that there. So you can see that it is shifted over to the right because we're putting such a high margin value on it. Next, what I would like to do is almost do the exact same thing for the confidential, except the margin left is going to be a little bit different. So let's go ahead and copy everything that we did here for the top secret, and we'll apply this to our confidential. So we don't want them shoved over the exact same. Let's go ahead and change this margin left to maybe 100. And that kind of gives them the staggering effect. And then later on, I'm sure we're going to be doing some sort of transforming here in order to rotate it. So I believe this should satisfy user story number 6 when it says, let's add some padding, add a left margin, and then a border. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next step here. User story number 7, and looking forward to user story number 8, it looks like that we've done both of these already, because it says that the confidential element needs to have confidential in it, top secret needs to have top secret in it. Again, I don't know why they didn't move this up higher on the list to build out our skeleton and actually to see the results of what we just got done doing styling, because if you remove the confident in here, or the confidential, we're really not seeing anything on here. We're just seeing a little square. And so I really thought it would be important to make sure that we had text in there, which is why I put it in there. Looks like those are actual user stories for number 7 and 8. All right, we'll just mark both of those as being done, and we'll move on to the next part here. So user story number 9, it says that the confidential and the top secret elements, they should all have a rotation in them and utilizing the transform property. So I'm going to come over here, work on the confidential first. Now notice that we can do the property of transform and then specify what do we want to do with the rotation by utilizing the rotate function. So let's go ahead and type that in. Now this will take a degree, and we can use positive numbers or negative numbers. And if I want to rotate things counterclockwise, I can just do a minus 20 and then type in DEG. And now the confidential is rotated counterclockwise minus 20 degrees from starting out with the 360. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and do the top secret. Let's make that one 15 degrees positive. So I'm just copying and pasting here. And let's do 15 degrees for it. And it's going to be a positive rotation. And you can see how it is canted to the right. Now, there are a few things before we move on because I'm noticing in the user stories that it is not brought up, but I would like to have something that is going to be the font size. Let's change it. So on the confidential, let's do the font size. Let's make that 30 pixels. So we'll do font size, 30 pixels. And don't forget the semicolons. There we go. Next is the top secret. Let's make that font size 20 pixels. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and just update. Again, don't forget the semicolons here, and we'll change that to 20 pixels. Now the text color itself, that should be red. So I'll do color red, and then I'll come down here and do the same. Okay. All right. So that should complete our stamps. And then I'm sure later on, we're going to be adding some text down here to help separate them because right now they are both overlapping. So let's go ahead and move on to our next user stories. All right. So in this user story here, I'm going to combine number 10 and number 11. And if you are looking at getting some text put in there, you can definitely take a look at the example where you'll be able to actually highlight all of these things here and copy it and then paste it in there. But you want to make sure that you put the proper P tags around things. So if you don't want to do all that, I will provide you all with a code snippet and it will be in the description down below. You'll just visit it and then grab it. Okay. What am I pasting? I'm going to be pasting the following. And on here, I am going to recommend that you give yourself a little bit of room. And that's where I'm going to be putting this in between. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in here the information that we copied from up there. Again, if you want, copy from code snap and you'll be able to apply that here. It will already have the class of blurred on there because that fulfills this second part here, which is, hey, you need to create a span element with the class of blurred. Okay. And so it just says here, dear agent, and then the PreCodeCamper. Okay. And then we added this span right here of blurred. And one of the things that I did want to bring up about spans, and again, this is from W3 schools, is that it is an inner container. Could you use a div? You could, but a div comes out of the box with a block level, and a span comes out of the box with an inline element. It allows us to keep the words all nice in the same row and allowing us to style them and target them later on with JavaScript. So anyways, that's what we're doing with this one here is the span. Later, we're going to be applying a blur effect utilizing CSS, and that way it will blur out some of the sensitive information, even though technically we can still copy it with our cursor. We're still able to see the stuff. So that should satisfy user story number 10 and user story number 11 with that code snippet that I ended up giving. Okay. All right. This is the last user story here. And it says that we should have a blurred selector that blurs the element 3 pixels by utilizing the CSS filter. So let's go ahead and apply that. Now, how are we going to target this? Right. And if we remember, we utilized a class name on here. And so classes have periods. So we're going to do the period and then the blurred selector. And then we're going to target it by utilizing the filter. And then what do we want to filter this by? We want to use the blur function and we want to apply a 3 pixel blur on this. And so now anywhere our HTML page where it had that word blurred, it will be applied utilizing this filter of blur that we just got done creating. So this should look exactly how it looked on your example. I believe this completes everything and fingers crossed, let's go ahead and test this out. All right, so always the fingers crossed here that when we run these tests that everything will be done. If not, like I said, we will adjust and figure out what's wrong. We hope to see confetti. Let's go ahead and test this out. There we go. We ended up getting confetti. Yes. Okay, you made it to the end of the video. Great. I tell you, this one, it was good, but it also had a few of the user stories out of step because for us to really experience everything, I feel like we should have just did all the HTML first and then start applying the CSS. But anyways, thanks again for watching. Please make sure that you like this video and subscribe and comment down below if you ran into any issues. We love hearing those, okay? That this video helped you move the ball forward. All right, take care.